This video is going to rank every single pavilion in Expo 2020 after I have visited them all. I'm going to be putting every single major pavilion which has a unique design into a tier list. If you want to see other videos about Expo 2020, I've made a bunch now and you can check them out in my channel. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. You'll see that I have 5 different tiers in my tier list. I've got my favorite. This is for the absolute creme de la creme. My favorite, again, this is a subjective tier list, so your favorite might be different to mine based on your preferences. Must visit, that's a general favorite, and I've made a video about my favorite pavilions to visit. Worth visiting is, yeah, just generally a good pavilion. If you have time is a bit meh, only really if you have time, or you can just kind of skip by this one so that you can go to some of the other ones that I'm going to share. And then skip is just, yeah, it's not worth it. So let's start off in the sustainability area, and we've got Singapore. Now Singapore is really green. I would say that this is a must visit. This has made the list on my channel before for the best pavilions. From there we've got the Netherlands. The Netherlands surprised me, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting it to be such a great sort of thing to do at Expo 2020. You get given an umbrella and it's quite interesting. So yeah, that's also going to go into my must visit too. Spain, I wasn't too blown away by Spain, to be completely honest with you. It's one of those where there's some great stuff in there, but I would say it's worth visiting. From there, you've got Kuwait. Kuwait has no wait time. You can just kind of wander into there, and it's nice and simple just to wander in, see lots about the country. So I'd say it's worth visiting just because of the low wait time. Qatar I feel was a bit late to the party at Expo 2020. It's only very small. If there's a huge queue for it, then it's not really worth it. But I would say this is kind of only if you have time to visit it. There's not a huge amount in there, but yeah, if you have time. Next up, we have Uzbekistan. I'm going to be completely honest with you here. Uzbekistan is the only pavilion that I have not been to because every time I've been to Expo 2020, it's been closed. I'm going to say if you have time, and it's more of if they have time to open it to you. From there, Azerbaijan, nice and simple, learned a little bit about the country, but it's a tricky one, Azerbaijan. I would say if you have time and if there's not a huge queue for that one. Sweden's a simple one. Actually, you get a free bottle of water at Sweden. I feel like it's worth saying that anything that gives you a freebie, not that you go there for freebies, is worth visiting. So I'm going to put it in there. It's nice to learn that everything inside the Sweden Pavilion is sustainable and made from wood. So from there, we've got Lithuania. Similar, there's lots of information about the country. If you want to go to some of the other ones, I would say Lithuania is, if you have time. Slovenia was a decent little tour, learning about the country and all of the interesting things around Slovenia. I was sat in the show a little bit and kind of like, I could be doing other things here. I would say, yeah, worth visiting, especially, no, I'm gonna put it, if you have time. Yeah, if you have time, I feel is a bit more suitable. From there, we've got the Philippines. I really like the Philippines. It's dark in there, don't get me wrong, but there was something relaxing about it, especially the first time I went there. There was that kind of awe and wonder element. Not only have you got the inside pavilion, you've also got an upper bit. So I'm actually going to put that in must visit. From there, we've got Canada. It was a big queue for Canada. It was about 20 minutes for me when I was there, and I can imagine it gets busier. It was a really interesting show, if you have time. None of these have been skipped yet, which is good to hear. From there, we've got, this one is Iraq, Brunei. They're kind of 2 smaller ones. So that's quite interesting. Those ones, easy to wander into, but also there's other pavilions that you could visit. So if you're from those areas, Iraq, Brunei, you might want to go and see it. Otherwise, I'd say it's if you have time. Norway. Here we have our first skip pavilion. I was really confused by Norway. Not only was it really quite a big wait to get into the Norway Pavilion, I was quite underwhelmed. The show is quite technological, but then the whole pavilion's about fishing, which I thought was a problem, but they tell you we need to do more fishing. It was kind of one of those that I went into, that was the first pavilion I ever visited, and I was like, oh, I hope this isn't what they're all like. Skip. For me, skip. Sorry if you're Norwegian, that's just how I feel. Lebanon. Great, had some swings in it. That's what I remember from that one, and some weird figure place people. yeah, this is worth visiting, definitely. Bahrain, I actually put Bahrain on one of my favorites. I've been in since and it's changed. They've taken a lot of things out, unfortunately. Bahrain is a really interesting exterior. It's easy to get into. I'm gonna say worth visiting. Pakistan. Now, when I made my best pavilions at Expo 2020, Pakistan, India, I put Pakistan up there on the list. I didn't put India on. Now, Pakistan, for me, is up there as one of my favorites. For other people, they might not feel that way, but yeah, I really liked it. It was a great mix of the country, learning about the areas, the landscapes, the culture. It really did have a little bit of everything and a lot of good technology too. UK, now as a British person, you'd expect me to put this in worth visiting. I'm not, I'm gonna put it in skip. Not only was it a huge walk up to the top, when you get to the top, there's no real reward at the top of the pavilion. You're kind of like, oh, is this it? Don't get me wrong, it's great exterior design, but I kind of missed the mark with that one, unfortunately. Palestine, I rushed Palestine, unfortunately, but this is worth visiting. It's really good to learn about Palestine and some of the culture and history in Palestine, definitely worth visiting. Indonesia, having been to Indonesia myself, I was really intrigued by the spices initially when you first went in. It's great to learn about the country and some of the economics that they have going for the future. Yeah, this is worth visiting. Switzerland, I really like the fog machine for Switzerland. The queue moves quite quickly, you get given an umbrella, and I like Switzerland. That's a must visit for me. Austria is nice and simple, easy to get into, and quite interesting. They've got like these, I'm gonna get it completely wrong. It looks like a cone, basically, is what I'm trying to say here. And yeah, worth visiting. China, I was really excited to go into China because the first couple of times I went into China, it was quite challenging to get into due to the queues and stuff like that. But when I went into China, there wasn't too much that I was taken back by. The exterior of China looks phenomenal at night. So on that, it's a must visit to see at night, but you don't actually need to go into the pavilion. I'm gonna put it on must visit based on that factor. Colombia, great coffee. It learned a little bit about the country too. So it's quite an interesting country to go to and learn about that pavilion and some of the culture, landscape, histories available there too. So I'm gonna put that in worth visiting. Belarus, there's a little bit of a tour with Belarus, but I really like the show and learning about that country. The best ones I feel like at Expo 2020 are the ones where you go in and go like, oh yeah, I'd like to visit there based on going into that pavilion. I feel like you came out of that with a real sense of that. Whether I do or not, that's a different thing. It was interesting hearing about all the greenery. That's certainly something I hadn't heard of. That for me, must visit. Surprised myself with putting that one on there. Australia, long queues. The actual outside with the food and drink is great, and they have some amazing shows. Having said that, the show itself there was two sort of longer shows. If you have time, I feel is a really fair one to put that into. From there then we've got Denmark. Denmark you can skip because you don't actually learn a tremendous about the country. Yeah, I feel like that's fair. You kind of go to the back of the shop. There is a bar and stuff at the top, so maybe that's a little bit better. I've not seen that personally. Oman. Oman is pretty big actually, quite an extensive pavilion. Smells amazing as well. I would say this is worth visiting. I'm gonna put this one over here. Worth visiting because you learn a lot about the country. From there, we've got Algeria. Algeria, yeah, was interesting again. You get to leave a note at the end of the pavilion. I'm gonna say Algeria is up there as a worth visiting pavilion. And then from there we've got Turkmenistan. My partner went into this one. I've been into this one. I'm not really taken back by Turkmenistan. They have a huge culture with horses and things like that. Skip. Russia, that's one of my favorites. Other people might think differently. I really like the brain show and the robotics that they have in there, so I'm gonna put that on favorite. Angler, really good to learn about the country. I'm gonna say worth visiting. No, I'm going to bring this to if you have time, just in case there's big queues. And finally, for the first part, Czech Republic. I had to really focus in there because I hadn't got the letters on that one. Czech Republic. For me, this is, if you have time, it's quite easy to get in and out of. They've got some great technology at this pavilion. So if you're interested in those sorts of technology things, I would put this in if you have time. So that's part one. I need to kind of reset this. India's going to be in the next part because I need to set the next part up. This, what I'm using at the moment, would only let me have a certain amount of countries. So part two, you'll see we still have the same ranking, but we're just gonna have a reset clear list so that we can start with the different countries. So Peru. Peru is one of the ones that I discovered later on. Peru is actually my favorite pavilion. Similar to Pakistan, it gives a real good indication of what the country is like, gives a real good sharing of the landscapes, the culture, and was one of those pavilions that I came away from feeling like, yeah, that's somewhere that I need to visit. This is one of my favorite pavilions and it's going right up there at the top. GCC Pavilion, this is something that was a bit of a random one to visit, but it is something where you get free coffee. So anything with a freebie is worth visiting. So it's going to go straight into the worth visiting section. Chile, or Chile, I don't know how we say that, but this one I would say is easy to get into. Not a tremendous amount of information about the country considering how big it is and things like that. So I'm going to put if you have time. It's not skippable, but yeah, if you have time. Malaysia is quite a big wait for Malaysia, but there's an interesting amount about, again, the landscape and the cultures. If there's huge queues, I'd say it's if you have time, but having been there, I'd say it's worth visiting. Ireland. Okay, so being from the UK, I thought that Ireland did a tremendous job, especially compared to the UK Pavilion. I, as you know, didn't rate the UK Pavilion. It was in my skip section, but this one has a big queue. The reason I'm going to put it in worth visiting rather than if you have time is because often at the ends there will be a bit of a show, Irish music, and that for me was really lovely, so worth visiting. Thailand is a must visit because although there is often a large wait, it's definitely worth waiting so that you can experience the show and the things to do in that pavilion. From there, Belgium, you get a free Lotus biscuit. So as we said, anything that has a freebie is worth visiting. So thank you very much, Belgium, for the free Lotus biscuit. Korea. Now, Korea, you do a lot of walking. It is my favorite external architecture. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's my favorite in terms of the way it looks from the outside, the spinning boxes that they have. It sort of relates to kinesthesia and the movement. There's a great amount of technology with AR, augmented reality, but in terms of seeing things, there's not a tremendous amount. I do still think though that it is a must visit. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but it is a must visit. Poland. I've been in Poland a few times now, and the more I go back to it, the better it becomes. I just think the people in there are really hospitable. Not only that, the last time I went in there, I got a freebie. So that is a worth visiting pavilion because we get a freebie. Iran. Iran was one that's nice and simple to get into. I actually think Iran is a must visit because you go in and you learn a lot about the country. I find it really interesting looking at I don't know if you call them carpets or rugs, but the way they're handmade. I was able to see someone doing that and the insane prices. A lot of people are going to disagree with me with Iran, but yeah, I thought Iran was a must visit. France, last time I went into France, there was the Baby Bell, and they were there for some reason. I ended up getting a free colouring set. I'd say this one though is if you have time, because there can be quite large queues. I didn't take a tremendous amount away from the France Pavilion. They do have a nice cafe, but you don't necessarily have to go into the pavilion to see that. Hungary is one of my favourite pavilions for many different reasons. There's a tremendous amount to do. I still absolutely love the ball pit at the end where there's a show, there's a dome, and yeah, I loved seeing that. It's all themed around water. Favourite, one of my favourites, definitely. Morocco is huge, and by huge I mean tall. each section you go into, you learn a different bit about the country. I didn't put this in my best pavilions video on YouTube, but after filming it and editing it, I felt like I kind of missed out there. And I'm gonna put it, yes, this time in my must visit. Saudi Arabia is amazing. And not only does it have quite a short wait, you can get in, get out quite easily. There's plenty to kind of do. They have like a spin-in water fountain. Then my favorite bit was like a dome where you learn a lot about the pavilion, the country. And then from there, you're able to discover a little bit too about areas as well. I'm really excited for Saudi Arabia to open up a little bit more to tourists so that I can eventually visit there with my girlfriend. That'd be nice. Completely sidetracked, but for me, must visit or favorite. I've not put a lot in favorite. I'm gonna put favorite. Hopefully create a bit of a top 5. I'm gonna regret putting it there in a second, but Luxembourg for me, it was very open, but the key highlight for me with Luxembourg was the slide, and as a result is a must visit, especially if it's quiet. The kids will love it, definitely. Kazakhstan, people are gonna disagree with me on this, but for Kazakhstan, I'm gonna put it in worth visiting. There's a cool robot show at the end, but I was kind of a bit bored by the first section. Robot show. I'm gonna put it in worth visiting because a lot of people will like that end bit. Mind you, this is my tier list, so no, if you have time. USA, you kind of go around, very American thing, you kind of go around on this people mover, you stand on it and you just kind of float around, and very American thing. It kind of reminded me of the film Wall-E, I don't know how you say that, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a must visit, to be honest. Again, people might disagree, but my tier list. DP World, I feel like I've made DP World quite popular through TikTok. I made a video about how to get free coffee in Expo 2020, and that went a little bit viral, quite popular. The reason I love DP World is 2 things. One, I didn't have a clue what DP World and figured out that it was actually a huge company. 3 things. 2, the waterfall fountain at the end was brilliant. And 3, free coffee, and the coffee's actually decent too. So I'm gonna say, is it my favorite? Must visit, I feel like must visit. There's one that I'm missing off here, and that's the Enoch Pavilion. A lot of people skip it. I do think if you've got kids, it's definitely worth visiting because it's quite easy to get into. There's lots of different activities, and I think children would generally enjoy it. Japan. I've made a comprehensive video about Japan. If you've not had a chance to get into Japan yet, you can watch that video. For me, I'm not gonna say skip, but it's if you have time. And by if you have time, it's if you have a lot of time and patience to not only go through the 60-minute tour, but also to try and get into it. You kind of need to book it online now. When I first tried, it was either get there in the morning or wait 2.5 hours. I feel like the people who work at the Japan Pavilion have kind of repeated their message so many times that they've become a bit desensitized to being warm, perhaps is the right way to phrase it. Yeah, no, if you have time. I won't say skip, but it's if you have time. Not had many skips this section of the video. Okay, now we move on to one part that this is really quite a challenging one. So this is where people perhaps fell out with me, not fell out with me, but disagreed with me on the last video, India. So a lot of people thought that I should have put India on the best pavilions in Expo 2020. Let's put India in. Now, if the first 2 floors of the India Pavilion had been followed over the 3rd and 4th, or even just take the 1st and 2nd floor and that's it, I would have said this is a must visit. I would have put it with must visit. Favorite, maybe. Having been to India, I learned a little bit. If that 3rd and 4th floor maybe went into the technology and the visions for the future, rather than just being super corporate, as it has kind of turned out to be, yeah, I would have put it must visit, maybe even favorite. Unfortunately, the top part is quite corporate, and for me was distracting away from how amazing the 1st and 2nd floor was. And as a result, I'm going to put it in if you have time. Greece is kind of like a small, big pavilion. I'm going to put it in if you have time. From there, we've got Israel. Aha, we have one that I can finally say, skip. Not only do you have to queue for the show that's kind of underneath the pavilion, I thought the show was really weird. Italy is worth visiting. It's nice and easy to get into. They have a huge 3D, David by Michelangelo. Basically a huge 3D model. So that's amazing. And yeah, it's a nice little journey as well. Really good in the cooler month. I kind of felt sorry for them when they were in the heat as well, because it's all very outside. From there, finishing on a brilliant one, we've got two more. Campus Germany is, probably made this really clear, my quite high favorite. There is a lot about the country and their future developments. There's plenty to do for the kids. I really like the swing at the end. I really like the first show. It's kind of like a hook, awe and wonder. There is a big queue, that's something I will say, and it's quite hard to smart queue. So you kind of need to be patient with that. But I would say that that swing section and those things throughout the pavilion, I think it's a really smart pavilion, and as a result is my favorite. From there, finally, is the United Arab Emirates Pavilion. Not only is it huge, I think the external architecture is phenomenal, the location's brilliant, and I'm gonna put it in, yeah, why not? Favorite. It's something I've been to a few times now and enjoy it every single time, and it fills me with this sense of national pride. I know what you're probably thinking, Thomas, you missed loads. I had my technical problems with the tier maker that I tried to use, and unfortunately didn't get to put all the countries in. So let's go through them now. So we've got Egypt to start off with. Egypt is a long tour, definitely worth it if you can get there early. It is long, but it is worth the wait. You've got Ukraine. Ukraine's quite corporate, so feel free to skip that one. New Zealand's actually one of my favourites. I'm going to put it in must visit though. It's nice and easy to get into, and it's a waterfall. You've got Brazil. Brazil's can be a little bit chaotic with the water, but I feel like children will enjoy that if you have them, so that is worth visiting. You've got Finland. Finland's full of lots of technology, so if you want to go and check out technology, go to Finland. That's worth visiting. And then from there, you've also got Serbia. That you feel free to skip that one because there's not a tremendous amount going on. And lastly, you've got Portugal. Portugal is one of those where it can be quite busy to get into. That's an if you have time. I did have Venezuela on my list. That's a skip. It's a simple skip. So there we go. That brings me to the end of the video, sharing my tier list on all of the major pavilions at Expo 2020. If you want to check out more of my videos about Expo 2020, I've made a range of different vlogs, my best pavilions and money saving tips too that you can check out within my channel. So feel free to subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Until then, I'm out.